and welcome to your Tone and Identity and Stories model from the story Am I Blue? So we are going to be working on this for 2 days. Please ignore the date that is on the top of this. This will actually be due on October 26th, so we will be working on it on Monday the 25th and Tuesday the 26th. And then tomorrow you will have an example of a choice story that you get to choose for yourself, and you will be doing the same type of activity as we are going to be doing with this lesson. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to click on your sway and open that up, because that's going to have most of the information that you're going to need for this unit. When you open your sway, this is what you will see: the Tone and Identity Stories, Am I Blue? Now, the story in this unit and the one that we will be doing in the next lesson are all stories related to LGBT topics. So lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. They've also added a couple other letters to that acronym, but that's the subject matter we will be dealing with over the next couple of days. All right, so we are going to look at literary text to analyze how particular lines of dialogue or events propel action and reveal aspects of character. We will be looking at how the differences between the point of view and perspectives of the characters and audiences or reader create effects such as mood and tone, and we will support claims with logical reasoning and relevant evidence and use appropriate varied transitions to create coherence and clarify the relationship among ideas and concepts. So we will be writing in that race format that we practice with the immigrant poetry on the last section. So as a starter, all right, we're going to look at our essential question. We're going to review some statistics about gender, do a mini lesson on tone. We're going to look at the story, read it, and discuss it out loud, and this will go over the course of 2 days. And we will be using some short stories, or a short story, from the anthology Am I Blue? All right, so our essential question, as always, is how does a person's environment shape their identity? So we've been reading about how immigrant communities struggle to assimilate, meaning join in with the community they move into, when they move to communities whose cultural norms clash with their own tradition. For the second half of our mini unit on tone, we are going to explore how environments affect youth whose gender is considered non-conforming, meaning it doesn't fit in with what is considered the norm. These teens often feel alienated when confronted by a world that rejects their sense of self. When their environment changes or they meet people who accept their differences, these same teenagers can grow and flourish. In the short stories we read, we will be examining how the authors create character that reflect their tone, attitude, and society. In the short story Am I Blue?, Bruce Colville, the narrator, suffers a crisis of identity because of bullying. So we're going to look through these stacks of photos here and look at some statistics about how do teens act and feel when they are not accepted for themselves, and how does this change when they may meet people who accept their differences. So we have this magazine cover that says Man Up, and it's got a picture of a man holding his child, which is a very non-traditional view of masculinity or manhood. So males are performed to show masculinity. They are privileged, and females to be models of femininity, which are subordinate. Masculine activities are more highly valued and privileged than feminine activities in most of the world, most of the time. The identities and activities associated with them, with men and women, are typically unequal. Gender is about power, and power is gendered. So typically you would see a woman holding a child, and that would be, something that would be considered feminine. But they are kind of turning that gender stereotype around by showing a man with his son. All right. Education. If everyone was able to be educated on the LGBT community, or about the LGBT community, and what they believe or want, I believe we would all get along better. If we could all understand, Melvin says. So this is from our novel. So all the straights would have to stop imagining that they didn't know any gay people. They would find out that they had been surrounded by gays all the time and survived the experience just fine, thank you. They'd have to face the fact that there are gay cops and gay farmers, gay teachers and gay soldiers, gay parents and gay kids, the hiding would finally have to stop. So the idea of education and understanding being the thing that would help people survive through their situations and help people be more empathetic towards other people. So according to this, 26% of LGBT youth say their biggest problems are not feeling accepted by their family, trouble at school, bullying, and a fear to be out or open. 22% of non-LGBT youth say their biggest problems are trouble with classes, exams, or grades. All right, so when you're looking at two different types of teenagers, the teens who are in the LGBT community are more afraid of being accepted and being bullied and fear of coming out of the closet, whereas teenagers who are not LGBT are more concerned with grades and classes and exams, and those are the things that they are more afraid of. Some other statistics: while the percentage of women and men aged 18 to 44 years who reported they were either heterosexual or homosexual was similar, 94% of women and 96% of men say they were heterosexual, while 1.1% of women and 1.7% of men say they were homosexual or gay. The percentage of women who reported they were bisexual was more than 3 times as high as men, 3.5% of the women versus 1.5% of men. An estimated 3.5% of adults in the United States identify as lesbian, gay, or bisexual, and an estimated 0.3% of adults as transgender. All right, so you have a larger percentage of people identifying as heterosexual, but when it comes to how many people report being out or being bisexual, the number is 3 times more likely for women to report this than men. And it's not necessarily that it doesn't happen, it's more that who's reporting it and who's admitting it. All right. So how many lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people? 9 million LGBT people are in the United States, more than the population of Wyoming, Vermont, North Dakota, Alaska, South Dakota, Delaware, Montana, Rhode Island, Hawaii, and Maine combined. That's 3.5% of the U.S. population is LGBT. 2.56 million are questioning, meaning they are questioning whether they are LGBT or to what degree. 25.6 million Americans, that's 11%, have some same-sex sexual attraction. 19 million Americans, which is 8.2%, have engaged in same-sex sexual behavior. 4,187,945 bisexuals, and that's 46.5% of the LGBT population. And then you have comparison by religion in the U.S. So 5.5 million are Mormons, 5.3 million Jews, and 3 to 4 million Muslims. We have 901,907 same-sex couples, and 194,629 of those same-sex couples are raising children, and 697,529 are transgender people in the United States. So a little note on language from this story. So there are some words in this story that we consider not to be words that are okay to use. They are slurs, and under normal circumstances, we would never ever want to say something like this. There's going to be a couple of them in this story. I do not censor them, just so you know. And there is one that is also of a racial nature as well. So just know that they are in this story for a reason. They are trying to prove a point. And he says it in this section where he says in the story, Melvin explains the usage of words like fag and queer, and if it is or isn't impolite to use. He says, it is impolite, but if you live in a world that keeps trying to grind you down, you either start thumbing your nose at it or end up very, very short. Taking back the language is one way to jam the grinder. My friends and I call each other faggot and queer for the same reason so many black folks call each other nigger. To take the words away from the people who want to use them to hurt us. All right, so the idea that he's saying people use these derogatory terms not as an insult, but to take back the language so that it does not become a derogatory term. So they use it with each other. All right, so please know that these terms will be in this story, not as a point to make you uncomfortable, but as a point by the author to prove that people are trying to take back language so it doesn't have as much power over them as it might have in the past. All right, so here's some more statistics. Top 5 worrisome stats about growing up LGBT. LGB youth are 4 times more likely than questioning youth are, and questioning youth are 3 times more likely to attempt suicide as their straight peers. Nearly 1/2 of transgender youth have seriously thought about taking their lives, and 1/4 report having made a serious attempt. 8 in 10 LGBT students surveyed say that they have been verbally harassed at school. 9 out of 10 LGBT kids say they hear negative things about being LGBT. The dropout rate for LGBT students is 3 times the national average. All right, so if you want more information about how to fight that in classrooms and how to fight bullying, you can go to safeclassrooms.org for more information about that. So, on the subject of death, each episode of LGBT victimization, such as physical or verbal harassment or abuse, increases the likelihood of self-harming behavior by 2.5 times on average. LGBT youth are almost 5 times as likely to have attempted suicide compared to heterosexual youth. Marvin got killed in the story because he was gay. Vince got beaten up because they assumed he was gay. People don't like what they can't control or whatever is different than themselves. So there's a typo in there, just so you know. It should be than, T-H-A-N. And this is from the trevorproject.org, and you can click on this link if you would like more information about that. A real man. Men are evaluated in terms of doing by showing that they have the personal attributes that qualifies them to approach the standard of masculinity. When they don't prove to be dominant, other boys gang up on them to show them that that's not the way they should be behaving. Butch would show doing as he beats up Vince because he believes he is gay and teaches him a lesson. All right, so this is from the link down below, EBSCOhost, and you can get more information about what she's talking about here. But this is seen in the story when Vince gets beaten up by the bullies because they assume that he's gay. All right. So that's just kind of a brief introduction into some of the statistics that will help maybe give you a little more understanding of situations and hopefully a little more empathy about this entire process. All right, so tone. Sometimes the author's tone or attitude is expressed through a character in a story. In the next 2 lessons, we will be exploring how tone is shaped by environment and expressed through characters' actions, thoughts, and words. In a story, pay close attention to how the narrator acts, thinks, and speaks. Also, note any changes in tone due to a shift in the environment, the setting, society, and other characters. We're going to read the story Am I Blue by Bruce Colville, and you can click on this back in the, right here, or you can click on it in the assignment, and you'll have the PDF pop up for you. So things to keep in mind. How does the narrator feel at the start of the story and why? And how does he feel after the world around him changes? So this is what questions you are going to be answering when we are doing the second part of this story. All right, so this is what your worksheet will look like. Okay, so this is very much like when we did the immigrant poetry. So in short stories, writers use characters' actions, thoughts, and dialogue to reveal their attitude or tone about their environment. In these short stories, the tone changes when the setting or the other characters change. In the chart below, identify 2 different tones. You will also practice introducing this evidence with a complete sentence that explains the author's tone in each citation from the text. This is called a transition. Use examples of tone below with definitions. All right, so your model. In the story Am I Blue by Bruce Colville, characters' actions, thoughts, and dialogue in the story reveal a shift in tone. In the beginning, the narrator feels blank. By the end of the story, their attitude about life has changed to blank. So this here will be your restate and answer, your topic sentence. So your restate is your first sentence, your answer is your second one. All right. And then you're going to practice writing transitions to introduce quoted evidence and explanation. Write a complete sentence that identifies tone, that ends in a colon. Add the quoted evidence after the colon to connect the transition. And in the next box, explain your ideas. Right. So we will come back to this essentially when we come back at the end of the story. But we're looking for how the tone changes. So after Vince is attacked by Bruce, his tone of blank is revealed when this happens. And then you're going to insert your quote. And then explain how this action reveals the tone of the character. How do we know it's whatever you've set up here? And we'll go through that together. Then you write a transition that reveals the author's changed tone about how their environment about their environment and introduce a quoted character, action, thought, or dialogue that reveals tone. So the tone changes to blank after Melvin turns people blue as Vince does this. Here's your quote, and then explain how this quote shows how that transition changes to this mood. And as always, you have your words down on the bottom, which you can click on to get your information. And then, so your negative ones are going to be in the beginning of this story, and your positive ones are going to be at the end of this story. So I'm going to end this video for today, and we will cross over to the second video, which is the reading of the story and working through some of the information together.